Hey everyone, in this video we are going to continue working on our first person 3D maze. We're going to add a door that blocks your path, a key that you would need to find to unlock the door, and a friend that you have to find before you can leave, bringing this tutorial up to parity with the previous tutorial, the 2D version. And I'd mentioned that there's a few differences when it comes to collision detection, and that's why I decided to show you what the main differences would be. And it all has to do with this component. The character controller requires you to handle collisions a little bit differently, but we'll look at that in just a minute. So down here we have two new objects. This door was created in Asset Forge. I have tutorials showing you how to use Asset Forge and how to export the models. This was made in 3D Builder. I have tutorials showing how to do that. I do want to call out that models made in 3D Builder, if you use the default setting, are enormous. So the asset I had to scale way down to 0.02. So what we'll do is we'll take the door, put it in the scene, take the key, put it into the scene, and we'll expand these. And just like last time, for whatever reason, because it's Unity, it adds this empty object. So even though this object has a transform component, it creates essentially an empty object with another transform component. Oops, sorry, I can't just do that. Got to unpack it. So unpack prefab, and now we can take those two children and then delete the empty parent objects. All right, so this one is the door, so we'll rename this. So that's just a right click and then rename. We'll rename it door, rename key, and we'll just push that into that corner. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. Okay, our door, let's move it over here. And I do want to demonstrate that you can only see it from one side. So it treats it like a plane for some reason. So from this side, you can clearly see the colors, the textures, but this side, it just shows you an outline so you know that it's there. It's also too small. So let's scale that by going to the inspector and doing 3 by 3, and we'll make it a little thicker. We'll make it 2. And then we want to rotate that inward, because that's the direction your player is coming from, and that needs to be 90 degrees on the Y, so you can just come up here to the inspector and set that to 90. You can move that forward a bit, and again, based on collisions, you might actually have to bring the door forward a little bit to make sure you're actually colliding with the door and not the maze itself, the entryway. But we can, again, we'll discuss a way around that too. Okay, so the door, actually that's not as far in as I thought. Let's move that a little bit more. Okay. So we're going to add a collider. So add component. We're going to add physics and then mesh collider, and that should make the object solid. Now we'll come over here to the key. Let's raise that up a bit, move that over a bit, move that back into the corner a bit. That looks good. Now for this one, and again, this gets back to the fact that there's a character controller. What we're going to do, we're not going to use a mesh collider on this one, because on the door, we're looking for a solid collision. Here, we actually want code to execute based on the collision. So we're going to use a trigger. And again, the only reason why we have to do this is because of that character controller. So physics, and we'll use a box collider, and we'll set it as a trigger. And now you can see it's still a box, but it is decent as far as it's not like too thick. Vertically, it's a little bit, but for a game like this, not a big deal. Actually, let's lower that a little bit. So we have our key, we have our door. Now again, because of this character controller, rather than putting the script on the character controller and saying if you collide with the key, such and such happens, it won't work right, at least at the time of this recording. you have to put the script on the key instead because it's Unity. So right-click, create C#, and we'll call this detect collide. I could spell detect. Okay. We click on our key object and we put on detect collide. And now we open that up. You can get rid of this line with the double forward slash. The double forward slash tells you it's not being executed. It's for internal documentation only. Same for this one. We're going to create a variable, so it's going to be a public, and it needs to be static, so it's accessible throughout the entire application. Public static, and it's going to be a string, and it's going to just be has key, and it defaults to no or n. Now, some folks will say, how come you don't use a bool, Boolean? And my answer is that too many times I've used a Boolean only to find out that I needed a third state, and Booleans don't support third states. They're just true or false. So by using a string, if it turns out that I need a third state, I can just check for a third state. I don't have to go back and change the variable type and change what I was checking for throughout the application. Someone will probably still ask, though. So outside of start, outside of update, on, trigger, enter, and we're going to say if other, that is, it's referring to this, which is the object that's being collided with, if other dot name equals main camera. And you need a double equal sign. That's why it's giving me the angry red squiggles. So if other.name is main camera, then has key is equal to y. Okay, so if I haven't missed anything, the door should be solid and prevent us from entering. The key should allow us to pick it up. And now we need the door to acknowledge that we have the key. So this is what I was saying about how you have to do things that you might not normally do. Actually, I've already shown you a few things, but here's one more. So right now, this already has a mesh collider. You can actually add another collider to this, okay? You can add multiple colliders. Maybe you're trying to detect what direction someone's coming from or something, but you can have multiple colliders. So what we're going to do, with the door selected, we go add component, and then we're going to physics, box collider, just like we did with the key. We edit collider. It's really thin, so we need to bring this forward. And this is important. We want this to be out in front of the mesh collider. In other words, we want you to collide with this because if it's behind, if it's back there, you're hitting the door and you're not getting to the trigger. By doing this, the trigger is in front of you. And that does additional benefits. Say you want an animation of the door opening up. Well, you really want the door to open up before you run face-lowing into it. So you can use these kind of forward triggers for several purposes. So if I haven't forgotten anything, we just have to do a little bit more coding. And speaking of forgetting, need to make sure we set the box collider to trigger, or else the code will not work for that. So let's take our detect script, put it here, open it up. So right now, the script is saying that if an object is colliding with it, if something is colliding with its trigger, okay, then key gets set to yes. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore because it depends on what object the script is attached to. So rather than checking the object that's colliding with what the script is attached to, it's going to check the name of the object that the script is attached to. So now rather than the other object, it's checking this object. So if game object dot name equals and we just called it key. And then let's add the squigglies. I was going to say I mentioned that, but I don't think I did. So if it's a single line, you don't have to do squigglies, but this is a good example where if I didn't add the squigglies, I might have forgotten because we want something else to happen. Let's have the key get destroyed. So rather than having the key still being there, let's actually get rid of it. So destroy game object. That also helps us know that it's working. Okay, so if the game object.name is key, so the object the script is attached to is key, and it collides with the main camera, then we want that to happen. Well, if the main camera is colliding with a different object and its name is door, now we don't want to set has key to yes. We want to see if they have the key. So we add another parenthesis here, double ampersand, and we check for another condition. And that condition is has key equals y, and another parenthesis. Because again, remember, each element, whatever you want to call it, each condition that's being checked needs to be surrounded by parentheses, and then the whole thing needs to be surrounded by parentheses. So I think that should do it. So now we're checking to see the name of the object the script is attached to, and we're checking to see if the key has been picked up. So let's give this a whirl. So we shouldn't be able to get through. Perfect. Can't get through the door. Let's grab the key. So the key was successfully destroyed. There we go. And then we're outside. So just like that, you've now added a typical kind of key lock. I don't want to call it a puzzle, but that's how that works. And now for the friend, it would just be just like the key. You add another object, and you check the name of the object. So for this 2D maze, I had a little elephant I drew. Sorry, I don't have a 3D elephant, so we're just going to do game object. 3D object, we'll just do a sphere. Again, the functionality is independent of what the object looks like. That's one of the things I try to always stress. It's about the coding. It's about the design. The actual appearance of the object really is meaningless. And let's just rename this ball. Now it has a sphere collider, so we can just do isTrigger. And again, we put detect on it. And now we just add yet another if. So the functionality is here and it's scalable. So let's copy this one. This is the closest one. And we add a new variable. So like I said, it's really functionally no different than the key. Public static string has friend equals no by default because you have to find it. Ooh, let's try that with the right syntax. And now that means this needs to check for it. So another double set here. And has friend equals y. And another parenthesis at the end. And now, if the game object is ball, well, I said ball for the game object, friend for the code. as long as you're being consistent. I'm checking for the name ball, and I'm checking for the variable friend, and here is where you kind of combine the two. So has friend equals y. So again, sorry, that should be outside. So again, sorry for repeating myself, but all the objects that you're picking up, it's the same functionality. It's just a variable. If you collide with the object, that variable gets set to a yes, a positive, whatever. And then you just have to make sure that you're checking for that variable's value before you let the person out. And one thing you should always do is when you add new functionality, make sure you didn't break something pre-existing. That's why I'm double checking to make sure that I can't get out. I do see an error there, although it's nothing I recognize. So now we grab the key. I probably grabbed it from behind when I backed up. Still can't get out. Let's grab the orb. And we're out. And there we go. So let's take a quick look at the error. Curl error 56, receiving data failed with Unity. I have no idea what that is, to be honest. And it doesn't link to anything. Usually if you have an error here, if you double click, it will go to the line of code that's creating the problem. So let's run it and see if we get the error again. No, we're not. So not sure what that error was, but doesn't look like it's based on any collisions. Grab the key. Grab the friend. And we're out. Okay, so I think that will do it for this tutorial. If there's anything else that you want to see, just let me know. But again, if you want them to pick up more objects, again, it's just adding another variable and then having the door checked to see if that variable has been set to a positive. So again, if there's any features that you want to see, just put it in the comments. And I hope you found this useful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.